The guy was sitting by the grave. He was talking to the grave like he was talking to Peter. The guy said there were a lot of flowers, and he would like to look at them with him. Rani almost cried. He calmed himself down and hugged the cross, saying she was fine, so don't let Peter worry. At that moment 3 guys appeared. They said that Ronnie was doing something in the rat again. They asked him if he had to pee, or if he wanted to steal something to eat by himself. But Ronnie said he didn't steal anything. The guys asked then why he was sitting here. One of the guys said that the protagonist stinks and pushed him away. They asked why, he said he was going to the toilet and was squatting in the woods. At that moment another guy came up and said that everyone was called to gather. They asked him what was going on, but the guy didn't really know, but everyone else was already there. Everyone in the room was in a row. The principal told the guys to be quiet. The principal told them that they wouldn't get this opportunity again. The protagonist noticed that there were no girls there. At that moment, the emperor and his wife walked in. The protagonist thought they matched the description of the angels in the book he was reading. The headmaster told the emperor that he hoped that among all the children he would find someone he liked. The headmaster said that they would probably find a friend here. The protagonist remembered what Peter had once told him. If you become a friend, you can study too, and they give you lots of delicious food. At that moment, a woman approached the protagonist. She told him that there was no need to be so nervous, they would just ask a few questions. When the guy looked up, the woman was surprised at how cute he was. The woman asked the guy how old he was. He said he was 7 and the woman said that was just the perfect age. And she said, can they take this guy? The woman asked the main character what his name was and the guy introduced himself. At the palace, the guy was surprised at how big his room was. But he thought he shouldn't touch anything. At that moment a maid came into the room along with some food. One of the maids said that mistress told them to wash him and bring him to her. The boy leaned his head back and said that he would wash himself. Rani begged that he would do it himself. The maids were surprised at his niceness. They said he could do it as long as he washed himself thoroughly. One of the maids took a glass and poured juice into it. She gave it to the guy and offered him a drink. The protagonist was surprised. It was the first time he'd ever seen a glass. He was surprised that he could even see the juice overflowing from it. At that moment he accidentally dropped the glass and spilled the juice on himself. The guy apologized and immediately wanted to clean it up. The maid stopped him and said he might hurt himself. They said they had to take off his clothes first. The maid started to take off his clothes and said they wouldn't do it quickly and would put him in another suit. At this point, when the maid took off his trousers, it turned out that the main character was a girl. She realized she was in big trouble. They found out she was a girl. The protagonist remembered her mum telling her not to let anyone know she was a girl. Mum had asked that it remain a secret between them, and that the girl should keep it until they met again. The foster parents were surprised when they heard the news. The maid said she thought the girl was hiding it, she didn't realize it herself, and she thought she should tell them. The maid asked what she should do. His Majesty said to start by changing her and bringing her to them. To His Majesty's wife, she just seemed like a very nice boy and she couldn't think. The protagonist didn't know what to do now. After all, her mum had told her that she mustn't get caught. The girl thought the Duke would be angry because they wanted a boy. At that moment the maids came and said they were going to the bathroom. The main character had never felt such warm water. She had only ever bathed in a river before. She didn't understand why they were so kind to her. She had lied to the Duke. One of the maids took a sponge and wanted to wipe the girl's back. The protagonist tried to object and said that she could do it herself. The maid replied that they would finish faster that way. When the maids saw the girl's body, which was all bruised, they were very surprised. Later the maids brought the girl to the Duke's room. The main character immediately fell on her knees and asked for forgiveness. Her new mum came up to her and told her not to be afraid, and they didn't call her for punishment. When the girl got up, everyone was surprised by her beauty. At that moment the Duke's son came in. He asked his mum if it was true that they had given him a friend to play with. Mum told Andy that they were just about to call him. But the boy said he'd already told them he didn't need a friend. Duke Marquez's second son, Andrea Marquez. When the boy saw the main character, he approached her and asked his mum if they had bought him a doll. But the boy was shocked that Ronnie said she was a human being. The mum explained to her son that they wanted to get him a friend, but he turned out to be a girl. The main character apologized to Andy and said that it happened that way. The girl said that he must have wanted a friend, but the guy replied that he didn't need any friend. The girl asked the guy not to chase her away. At that moment Andy ran up to the father and asked him not to chase the girl away. After all, they would be fine with her. The main character was puzzled and didn't understand what they were talking about. At that moment the Duke stood up and said enough talking. He said that he had seen the child and that was enough. The man ordered to go to his room because it was already late. The protagonist unknowingly got her hopes up. But she thought she couldn't be forgiven. After the girl left, Andy's mum told her husband that the girl would probably be in trouble if they took her back to the orphanage. She thought there had been a mistake. Duke said he didn't think it was right. And it's impossible. He said you can't be that nice. The Duke realized that, as he thought, he needed a daughter. But really, he couldn't believe there were such adorable children in the world. The Duke was very jealous every time his friend bragged about his daughter. And it just so happened that the one taken from the orphanage would turn out to be a girl. Duke said the girl would stay here for a while. Andy was happy to finally have a little sister. The Duke said that during this time he would decide whether to accept the main character into their family. At that moment his wife asked him if he didn't want to let her go, why he treated her so coldly. The man did not understand and asked what she meant. The woman clarified that he told her to go back to her room with a very fearful expression on her face. The Duke was surprised and explained that he just wanted her to rest, because she looked tired. Andy asked his father what that meant. He did have a very stern look on his face. The action shifts to the main character. She asked the maid if she was sure. The maid relayed the gentleman's words that she could stay. The main character asked if she would then be a friend of the young master. The maid said yes and the girl was very happy. She thought she seemed to be forgiven. The maid was angry with the protagonist. She looked like an ordinary child. The woman didn't understand why they decided to keep her, especially a girl. The main character said she would do everything. She could clean and water the flowers. The maid replied that she would do everything herself and soon she would be gone. Roro thought that just like the young master said, the doctor was proving to be marvelous. She too wanted to treat other people's wounds. It was the first time the girl thought she wanted to do something. The protagonist was very scared because last time he was very angry. The maid told the girl not to upset the Duke and to calm down. When the Duke came in he asked if the girl was well rested, but at that moment he noticed she was gone. The maid said that if the man was looking for the child, he had hidden. The man approached the protagonist and asked if she had rested well. The girl replied that she had a very good rest. She thanked him for letting her stay and expressed her great gratitude. She apologized for not being able to say so at once. The Duke didn't understand how this 7-year-old child had to live to be so afraid of people. The man said he wasn't here for her apology. He was here to give her a new name. The Duke remembered discussing with his wife that the name Rani was more appropriate for a boy. And why they shouldn't give the baby a new name. The woman said the Duke had wanted to give it to his first child. The man thought it would suit her very well. The Duke told the girl her new name was Rosnay. Rosny Evelyn. The protagonist smiled and said it was a very pretty name. She thanked the Duke. At that moment he turned around and asked the maid if the girl was put in this room. After the maid confirmed it, the man told the girl to be put in Sophia's room. The man said it was ready for occupancy. The maid was very angry and surprised because it was the room of Sophia, the Duke's younger sister. The woman did not understand that the Duke wanted her to give the room to this girl. Before leaving the Duke stopped and said that he forgot one very important detail. The maid hoped he was about to say he'd made a mistake. After all, you can't give such a room to an orphan from an orphanage. The Duke turned to the girl and said they would call her Roro. The protagonist had a terrible dream. The headmaster of the house was scolding her for stealing food from the guests. The main character tried to justify herself and said that she didn't do it. But the director told her to shut up and hit her. The maid looked at the sleeping Roro and did not understand why the girl was still lying in bed, because the sun had long risen. The maid woke the girl up and she immediately jumped up. The maid said that Roro had frightened her and asked why she had to jump up like that. The protagonist calmed herself down and said it was just a dream. The maid pounded on the table and asked Roro why she was still sitting there, if she wasn't going to wash. The girl was brought water for washing. She was glad that what happened yesterday was not a dream. The maid couldn't believe she had to take care of this child. The woman thought the protagonist was just an ordinary girl, no different from her. The maid didn't understand how she could act like a princess. The woman brought clothes and said that if the girl was done she should change quickly. When Roro saw the clothes she was overwhelmed by their beauty. The girl didn't realize if she could wear such a thing. The maid asked the girl why she was standing there, she didn't know how to dress. To which the protagonist frightenedly replied that she could do everything herself. The maid thought that was good because she should be able to do it. If she has any intelligence at all. The girl stood there and couldn't figure out how to put on a dress. At that moment she heard voices coming from outside. Andy was walking towards the girl. The maid tried to stop him, but the boy told her it was all right. After all, Mum said she wanted to see them too. That's when he went into the main character's room. He said he would help her. The maid asked the girl how she was feeling. Roro didn't understand and the maid said it was about her wounds. After all, some of them had not healed yet. Andy asked what they were talking about. But the protagonist replied that it didn't matter. At that moment the guy started to leave and told the girl to get dressed and he would wait outside. After the guy left, the main character asked the maid not to tell anyone about her wounds. The woman was surprised but agreed and said that first she had to change her clothes. Later the girl was sitting at a fancy table. The girl's mum said that they didn't know what she liked so let her try everything. At this point Andy took the girl's plate and said she should try this. He gave her the meat and said it would taste good if eaten whole at once. The main character had never seen a plate like this before. When Roro started chewing everyone thought they wanted to caress her cheeks. When the main character swallowed the food she said it was delicious. Andy got excited and said that she should listen to her brother after all. Mum told the boy that his brother shouldn't be too picky about what he ate. The woman noticed that the main character was eating vegetables well and said she was proud of her. Andy replied that he was just about to start on them too. That's when the guy noticed the girl's hand. He said that it might get dirty. The guy tried to roll up her sleeve and saw the bruises on her arm. He asked what was wrong with her arm. The next day, the protagonist was traveling somewhere with the Duke. Roro rubbed her eyes with her hands and at that moment the Duke told her that she shouldn't do that and gave her a handkerchief. Before that, after everyone noticed the girl's wounds, the protagonist fell to her knees and apologized, asking not to be kicked out. She said she didn't want to show him the wounds. The girl called herself vile and said this place was not for her. In the carriage, the Duke asked Roro if he could ask him a question. The girl said yes and the man asked if they kicked her out the orphanage director would scold her or hit her. The protagonist shook and the man realized she was still afraid of him. The man asked if he looked like he was going to hit her. Roro said he didn't. Duke asked then if she really thought they were going to kick her out. He said that if she was unhappy with them, he would find her somewhere else where she would be well taken care of. But the Duke said they wanted to be with her. As long as she wants to be with them. So she has nothing to worry about. That's when they arrived and the protagonist realized they were at her orphanage. The director of the orphanage appeared and asked the Duke what brought him here. He asked if he had come for the girl this time. The Duke told Roro to come out. The orphanage director was surprised and asked how the boy dared. Duke explained that it was a girl. The director apologized and said he should have been more careful. The man said that this child cheats everyone very often. The principal didn't expect that the girl would dare to cheat him. He said that no matter how much he scolded the protagonist, she remained uneducated. The principal said that the protagonist was very naughty. Now the Duke understands why he decided to take care of the girl. She is grateful for every little thing, she can smile brightly, this poor child with a big heart wants to protect. The Duke told Roro that she had nothing to fear here. The principal turned to the girl and said that he would surely punish her properly. At that moment, Roro said that the headmaster is a liar. It's him, she knows her friend Peter did nothing wrong. But the principal beat him to death. The man tried to object and said he was innocent. But the Duke asked how he had the courage to do such a thing on his land. He ordered the guards to take the man away. The headmaster asked if he was doing this because he took this child at his word. The only one who believed the protagonist just like that. After arriving back at the palace, everyone was very happy to see the protagonist. The mum told the girl that they were very worried about her. The mum hugged the girl and her son. She said that Roro is a very nice and sweet child. And that she deserved to be loved. The main character didn't know what to do. She couldn't believe that such good people believed and cared about her. She felt so good, she thought she was going to cry. She thought everything would be fine now. At night her mother brushed the girl's hair and told her that she had a very beautiful hair color. The woman realized that very soon it would be longer than her shoulders. She already imagined how marvelous it would look. At that moment the woman offered to apply healing balm on her body and the girl agreed. Mum said that if she wore it regularly, the wounds would heal. When the woman took the clothes off, she was upset about the bruises. The woman asked the girl how come she was pretending to be a boy in the orphanage. Roro said her mum told her not to tell anyone she was a girl. Even the director thought she was a boy. The woman suggested that maybe that was her way of keeping her daughter out of trouble. The mum smiled and said she didn't have to hide it now, because they loved her just the way she was. The next day the Duke gave the girl the papers and said it was a proof of identity. He listed his own name as the guarantor. Alexander Hayes Marquez. That's his name. He pointed to the document and said it says the girl's full name. And it also states that he becomes the guardian of Rosnay Evelyn Clive until she reaches the age of majority. The man explained that Cleve was his family's last name, but no one carries it now. He said it would help the girl in the future. For example, with her schooling. The protagonist replied that she would work very hard. She would study hard at writing and everything the Duke said. Roro said that maybe that wouldn't make the Duke so happy. Alexander asked if it was true that she would do whatever he said. The girl agreed and the man told her to go play. The man explained that Andy was always watching her and waiting for an opportunity to play. Although Duke said it wasn't even because of Andrea, it was just the kid's job to run around and have fun. After the girl left, Duke looked at the pile of papers. He knew they couldn't talk as there wasn't the right situation. But it would happen soon. Andy, laying on the grass, said that playing with the girl was a lot of fun. He asked her to take a break and sit next to him. After Roro agreed, the guy asked her why she kept calling him master, and asked if she didn't want to call him brother. The protagonist replied that she can't act so impolite to him. The guy smiled and said that then she will call him that when she can. He said that he will wait for that day very much. They squeezed their little fingers and the guy said that is a promise. Roro sat on the grass and said that it is very beautiful. She asked her brother, the sky is very beautiful, isn't it? At that moment she noticed that the guy had fallen asleep. She wanted to go and have a little look around while he was sleeping. Going around the lake, the girl realized that it was very big. She noticed a tree and thought that if she climbed up she could get a better look at everything. But when she climbed up she realized it was very slippery. She couldn't get up and decided to climb down. That's when she saw a man and fell down. An unknown guy caught her and she didn't realize who it was. The girl thanked the guy. At that moment she heard Andy's voice. Roro asked him to let her go. At that moment Andy appeared and saw the guy and he asked his brother why you are here. The main character was surprised that it was the older brother. After a while the whole family was sitting at the table. Mum asked Hughes why he came and didn't even stop by first thing, but the guy reminded her that he had warned her that he was coming early. He said he went to pick up Andrea and he wondered what kind of child the father had written about. The main character was surprised by the guy's beauty and got embarrassed. The girl's mum said that they didn't have time to tell her, but even so, it's good that now there is an opportunity to get acquainted. This is Euris, their first son. Julie Caesar L. Marquez. The girl thought the boy really looked like a duke. Andy asked her why she wasn't eating. Julie's was surprised that his brother called the girl a Roro. Andy told him he could call her Roro. At that moment Julie's told his father that it was his nickname. But Alexander asked if it wasn't good. And the boy answered that it is and he will call the girl Roro too. The protagonist wanted to introduce herself nicely. But it went wrong. Andy gave the girl a piece of cake and said it was good too. When the girl tasted it, she was very happy because it was delicious. At that moment she noticed that everyone was looking at her strangely. But only Julie's was looking at her with a scary look. Roro turned to Andy. He asked if she wanted to play with him after the meal. The protagonist agreed and the guy said that Euris could play with them. At that moment the butler came to the Duke. He said that guests had arrived. The girl's mum was surprised and asked if they were not expecting anyone today. The butler said it was Duchess Sophia. But he immediately corrected himself and said it was the Marquis' wife and daughter. Sophia asked the maid where her brother was. She was told that the Duke and Duchess were having tea in the garden. The woman was surprised and asked if they had guests, but the maid said that the Duke had brought an ordinary child. When the woman came to the table, the Duke asked her what brought her here. Sophia asked what kind of questions. She said she always comes this time of year. And she asked when else she could see her wonderful nephews. The woman said hello to the girl's mother. Pelsera told Sophia that she had been warned of her arrival and they would be able to prepare a place for her in advance. But Sophia replied that it was her fault for arriving so unexpectedly. At that moment the protagonist noticed Sophia's daughter and thought that she looked just like from a fairy tale. Julies told her not to forget to drink. Sophia's daughter thought the guy was talking to her, but he was actually saying it to Roro. Before Sophia came to the table, the maid told her that the girl was clever enough to pretend to be a boy. Sophia replied that her brother had too soft a heart and was easily deceived. The maid said that by taking advantage of the Duke's trust, the girl had even been given a noble name. Sophia was very surprised, and the maid also told her that the Duke had given the room she usually used to Roro. The woman thought the protagonist had no idea who she was messing with. She wanted the girl out of here. Later, Andy was walking with Roro. The boy said he was very disappointed. He told the girl that it was very hard with the aunt and Lydia. The boy said that the aunt is like a teacher, telling her to sit quietly and eat only healthy food. Lydia follows her brother everywhere and treats him like a servant. Andy was really hoping she wouldn't come this time. The main character was surprised that such a beautiful girl would behave like that. Andy told Roro that it didn't matter now. Now he has her and they can play together. Pauline said that there were many things in his room. He grabbed the girl's hand and it hurt. The boy asked if she had hurt her hand again. Sitting at the healer, the man said that luckily she wasn't hurt too badly. The doctor asked the girl again if it was true that she had tried to climb a tree, and the girl confirmed it. But the man realized that it didn't look like a recent wound. He asked the Roro if the bruises went away quickly. The girl said that even if she bumped it healed faster. At this point the man thought for a moment. He had heard that the wounds were very serious, and now they were almost invisible. He remembered that he thought the Duchess had said she applied healing balm. When he'd asked the woman if she'd really used it, he told her that it could not heal all the girl's serious wounds. The woman said she wished she would get better soon. The man stroked the girl's head and said she should be better by now. As he left, he told her to call him if she felt ill. The man thought that the main character was just as kind and sweet as the Duke. She used to only think about how to reduce the pain. All thanks to the Duke, the Duchess, and the young master. The protagonist was thinking how she could thank them. That's when Andy came in. He asked if the treatment was over. The protagonist confirmed it. At that moment, Lydia appeared behind the guy. She asked the guy why he was so surprised and said it made her sad. At this point, the girl turned to Roro and said that she failed to introduce herself properly earlier. She's Andy and Yusa's cousin, Lydia Roddam. She said that before, and it was sad that there were no girls of her age in the palace, so she was very happy to meet her. So Lydia suggested a girls-only time. The main character was surprised and Lydia told her that they would go to tea, just the two of them. Roro thought that unlike her, Lydia was a real lady. Looking at her, the girl thought she didn't fit in yet. The main character agreed and Lydia suggested that she go to her room, since everything was ready there. Andy was surprised to be left like this and thought that maybe he should tell his brother. Entering the room, the main character was surprised that it was so big. Sitting down at the table, Lydia said that the maid would bring tea and dessert. After that, the maid appeared and brought snacks and tea. Lydia offered Roro to taste the tea made with lime grown at her house. The protagonist took the cup and thought she should be careful because the tea was hot. But the girl was surprised why the maid was looking at her like that. At that moment Lydia turned to the maid and said that it was not nice to look at the guest like that. The woman apologized but asked, being a daughter of the Duke's family, how it was possible to hold a cup with two hands and make such loud noises. The maid said that not knowing even the base coins, to humiliate Lady Lydia that shared a meal with the protagonist. At that moment, Lydia said to stop to the maid. The girl said that not knowing is not a crime, and asked if it was the Rosny's fault. But at that moment Julies came in and asked what was going on. A couple of minutes before that, Andy came up to his brother and asked him where he was going. Julies replied that he was going to training. Andy wanted to see his sword skills and asked to go with him. Julies asked why he was playing with the Roro. But the guy said that the girl was taken away by Lydia. She said that they were going to play together since she was his sister. Andy said it was obvious that Lydia liked her too. After all, Roro is very cute. When Julies thought about it, he realized that the girl was really cute. He said that since they were the same age they would become friends faster than Andy and Roro. Andy objected and said that a girl wouldn't do that. After all, a bad person like Lydia couldn't be friends with a Roro. At that moment Iris stopped and Andy bumped into him. The boy remembered a situation from long ago. The maid spilled water on him and apologized. The guy replied and that she must have been really scared and shouldn't apologize. The woman apologized and said that she really didn't mean to. She said she still lacked experience. Later, when the guy was walking down the corridor, he heard shouting. Lydia was yelling at the maid and asking how dare she act like that to him. Does she really want to be his mate? When Julies entered the room, he saw that the maid was on her knees. The guy asked Lydia what she was doing. The girl tried to justify herself and said that she would not forgive the maid for daring to touch him. But the guy approached the maid and helped her up. He asked the girl what right she had to punish their maid. The lad told her not to dare touch the Duke's men. Julies hoped that things were completely different now, because she couldn't have done such a thing. Guy asked if the Marquis maid was always so cheeky. Lydia took the boy by the sleeve and said that it was she who badly trained the maid and apologized. Lydia told Roro that she was sorry, and as an apology, Iris interrupted the girl and said that the protagonist was free to do whatever she wanted here. He advised Lydia to treat her with respect from now on, and the Duke would take care of the punishment of this servant girl. Lydia apologized to Roro for not taking care of her. The girl offered to finish for the day. She offered to have a good time again next time. Walking together with Ulysse, the protagonist thought that she would really like to learn manners. The boy told her that she shouldn't be afraid. He told the girl that this was their home and they were just visiting. Roro realized that the first and young lord did look like a duke. She thought that this couldn't go on. If she did something wrong, it would make everyone uncomfortable. The girl thought that even if she couldn't thank them now, at least she would become one that she wouldn't be ashamed of. Later, sitting at the table with Lydia, the girl asked Roro if she wanted to go to etiquette class with her. The protagonist replied that she couldn't. But after gathering her courage, she asked if she could just stay by her side during the class. The protagonist acted as Lydia had planned. Lydia told Roro that if she wanted to act like a maid, she could stand around all she wanted. She suggested that we study together instead. After all, it was much easier to study with someone to look up to than to study alone. At that moment a guy came in and told Lydia it was lesson time. At that moment the protagonist thought it was Peter. The protagonist approached the guy, but he told her he wasn't Peter. The protagonist apologized. But Lydia told her there was no need to apologize like that. She told her he was her whipping boy. Lydia explained that the children of nobles always have at least one child to be beaten in class instead. Roro asked why children should be beaten. Lydia asked her if she thought it was okay to use physical punishment on noble children. The girl said that since Roro was coming with her, she would lend him to her for the lesson. During the lesson, the teacher repeated to the protagonist that she should not open her knees. But when she tried again she failed. The woman told the girl to repeat after Lady Lydia. Lydia asked the woman not to scold the girl too much. She said that the Roro didn't have a chance to learn it. The protagonist's legs were so sore that it was even hard for her to stand. The girl remembered how she begged her mum to go to the etiquette class. The woman had told her she was too young for that. Roro pleaded with her mum and told her that she wouldn't make her uncomfortable. The woman said that's not what she meant. She said that while the little girl is still young, she needs to play more. Since the little girl lives with them, that's the first thing she asked for. Her mum told her that if it got hard, she could stop doing it, and the protagonist agreed to that. Roro thought she was barely allowed, so she couldn't give up. The teacher said she couldn't do it without it. She asked the girl to give her hands. At this point Lydia told Roro to think again. What if she hurt herself? The girl offered the protagonist to take her Leon. But Roro said she would take her own punishment. It's her fault, she can't make someone else responsible for it. Lydia asked the girl if with those words she meant to offend the other nobles, including her. But the protagonist said that was not the case at all. The teacher said that she would treat the girl with honor and then began to beat her palms. A few days later, Andy ran to the girl and wanted to go to the forest with her. It had been a long time since they had played together. Andy hadn't been able to go with the girl because he had a fencing lesson with his brother, and now Roro didn't always get to go with her because she was in etiquette class. The guy realized that suddenly they were so busy. Entering the room, the guy said that it had been a while since they had seen each other. But looking at the girl, he was really scared. Roro told the boy not to worry and that she was fine, but Andy asked how he could not worry because the girl had become a skeleton. The main character said that she still had a lot to learn. Andy asked if that's why she turned into a walking skeleton. He asked who did it. At that moment the protagonist cried and the guy was very surprised. He asked who dared to make her cry. But the protagonist calmed him down. At that moment Guise appeared. He told Andy that if you scatter food on the floor, Mum will swear. But when he saw the whole scene, he was a little surprised. Roro started to run away. She thought she couldn't be seen like this by the first young master. She didn't want to be seen like that. But Guise just grabbed the girl and didn't let her run away. He said he would listen to her first. The guy asked the Roro if she was sure she didn't want to say anything. Andy said let her just tell her big brother would scare everyone. But Roro said she just wasn't feeling well. Andy asked her if she was in pain and if she could go to the doctor. At that moment Guise noticed the wounds on the girl's arms. He told Andy to pick up the basket from Paul and bring more snacks. Andy was surprised and asked if it was important now. But Guise asked him if he had forgotten how he threw the food around the room. When the guy left, Guise told the girl that she didn't need to hide it. Roro replied that she didn't know what he was talking about. At this point the guy got down on his knee and asked her to give him her hand. The girl said she was fine, but Guise replied that she wasn't fine at all. The guy said she needed to have her wounds treated. After he finished, the guy said she should feel better. Guise told the girl that he would take care of everything, so she had nothing to worry about. The guy started to leave and Roro jumped up from the bed and said she wanted to go with him. She didn't want to be alone. The guy asked her what she meant. At this point he noticed that she had been alone the whole time. He noticed that the fireplace was not lit although the girl was in the room. The boy remembered the conversation between the maids. One of them asked if the other had hidden everything well. The other maid replied that they could turn the whole house upside down and they wouldn't find it. It was very annoying that they had to take care of the girl. But now they thought she would understand her place. Guise realized that that conversation was about Roro. The lad knew that the mother and father were careful of this child, afraid to use her. Now it made sense to the boy. The maid came to the Pelserer and told him that the young master said it was important. He asked his mother to go to the Roro room. He conveyed that the woman would understand everything when she saw it. Sophia asked the woman what was wrong. To which the girl's mum replied that it was nothing. It's just that Guise wants to discuss something about Roro. Pelserer apologized and said she would have to go away for a while, but Sophia said it was okay because she had to pick up Lydia and offered to go together. Sophia also asked if the woman was sure she wanted to punish the maid. Sophia said she would kick her out for one wrong word, but the Pelserer said the Duke is her husband, she's his sister. And Roro is the child the Duke brought into the family. To speak with such a careless tone is to disrespect the entire Marquez family. Sophia said it was true. She was actually angry and didn't understand how the woman dared to compare this child to her, a direct descendant of the Marquez family. Sophia hoped this would end quickly. Pelserer had never liked Sophia acting like the mistress of their family. The girl's mum told Sophia to let Sophia know about her visits in advance from now on, to which Sophia replied that she didn't think it was necessary, after all she was born and raised on the estate. Sophia didn't realize how long the woman would cover for this child. When the women went into Lydia's room, they saw that she was throwing things around and asking who could take him. Sophia approached her daughter and asked what was wrong. The girl told them that her necklace was missing. The necklace her father had given her. The girl said that it was very dear to her. Her mum told the girl not to worry and they will find it soon. Sophia said that no one dares to offend the bloodline of Duke Marquez and the daughter of the Marquis. Sophia asked her daughter if she had looked everywhere in the room. But Lydia said that Roro certainly did. The girl said she had attended etiquette lessons with her. She offered to go to her room. Before that, Lydia asked her mum if it was true that the protagonist had taken their room. The girl said it can't be. After all, they don't even know the girl's lineage. But Sophia told her daughter to be quiet. She didn't realize if she was being treated like this because she hadn't inherited the Marquez family's powers, divine power. It originated from the very first emperor who descended from heaven. The power appeared in members of the imperial family, as well as in some families where the blood of the first emperor flowed. And many generations later, glimpses of the power remained only in the families of Emperor Duke Marquez. This power represents not just power. It's the law of the newborn, comparable to being deprived of imperial power. Sophia remembered that Julie's power had already begun to manifest. The woman thought that if she and Lydia married, the whole family would be in her hands. Later, the protagonist didn't understand why everyone was gathered here, even the young lady and the Marquis. Sophia said they hadn't had tea together in a long time. She asked Julies how he was doing at the academy. Apparently she had heard that he had finished the term again with excellent grades. The boy replied that he was just lucky. Sophia said that they would like to know more about the academy. At this point, Sophia asked the main character if she liked the tea. The woman said that it was their family's specialty recipe. The girl said it was really good. At this point, Lydia noticed that the girl was now holding the cup perfectly. Roro didn't know what to do. Everyone was looking at her. At that moment the maid accidentally spilled the tea and apologized to Lydia. The girl said it was okay, just a pity that the carpet was now stained. The maid started to mop the floor and took out the necklaces from there. Lydia asked how it got there. She asked the main character if she had decided to hide it until they left. Roro said that she hadn't, and she hadn't even had that thought. Sophia angrily said that was an unprecedented impertinence. She told the girl's mother that even though their family had shown her favor, she had committed a despicable act by stealing someone else's. The main character said that it really wasn't her, and it was the first time she had seen the necklace. Sophia asked if she still dared to make excuses. She said that's what it means to be a person without a conscience. Roro thought it looked like Julie's was angry with her. The girl was scared and realized she had to say she hadn't stolen, but she was afraid to say a word. At that moment Pelsera stood up and said that she wouldn't let them even touch that child, and they are accusing her without reason. Sophia asked what she was talking about and why she suspected her. Mama Roro didn't know it would happen like this and didn't understand how long Sophia intended to lie so blatantly. At this point Julie stood up and said that was enough. He asked Sophia how she could call herself an adult after that. The guy hugged the girl and said she shouldn't worry. And they will protect her. Julie's told Lydia to watch her tongue. The girl objected and said that even though there was evidence, he only believed the word of some child. Sophia said it was a direct insult to the Marquis Rodham's family. The woman said she wouldn't just let it go. At this point the Duke walked in and said that the first person to cross the line was her. Sophia asked her brother to hear her out, but the man just walked on by. The Duke walked over to his daughter and took her hand and said he didn't know anything and apologized. Duke knew that the person behind what happened was Sophia. The woman said that it wasn't her tutor who hit the girl, but Alexander objected and said that she was the one who hired her and allowed her to be physically abused. And he, as the child's legal guardian, has the right to punish her for it. The man turned to Lydia and said she had better find a new godfather. Lydia thought that Roro had taken Julie's and her uncle away from her. Her mum came up to her and asked her if she was scared. And the girl said she was fine. Her mum asked her to wait a bit and said that it would all be over soon. Sophia asked her brother if he realized that disowning the Marquis of Lodham's family did not bode well for him. The Duke replied that this child was not one they could do as they pleased, because she would be their daughter. Lydia shouted at the Duke that he couldn't send her away for this orphan. But Sophia told her that enough was enough. They angrily walked away. At that moment, Andy ran up to the protagonist. He said he'd told his father everything. About how they dared to tell her off for bullying her. At this point, Mum suggested that Roro go for a short walk with Andy. The woman said that at this time of the year the flowers were blooming very beautifully and the girl agreed. As she left, the girl remembered about the necklace. When the protagonist left, the Duke told Julie's that children should not see such scenes. And now he ordered all the servants of the house to be summoned. Roro ran with the necklace to give it back. Andy asked the girl if she really wanted to give it back. The protagonist replied that it looked very expensive and important. Her brother replied that such kindness could be a disadvantage for her. When they went outside, Lydia started running towards them. She asked the girl how she dared to take her place and who she was. Lydia almost hit the girl, but Andy covered her up. Lydia was surprised and Andy said that he protected the girl because she was his sister. Roro got scared and pointed to the guy's cheek. But Andy just asked if the girl saw how cool he was. The guy said that anyone would have thought he was the cool older brother. But Roro was worried and said they needed to treat the wound sooner rather than later. Lydia asked the girl, doesn't she realize that her very existence is an inconvenience to this family? Andy got angry and told her to keep her mouth shut. He said he wouldn't let her do anything. But the main character stopped him and approached Lydia. She gave her the necklace and thanked her for being able to learn a lot from her. Roro said she would take Lydia's words to heart. She would try to never make people uncomfortable. Roro said that Lydia didn't have to worry about that. The maids were surprised at such a sudden gathering and didn't realize what was wrong. They thought that suddenly someone had done something wrong. The etiquette tutor was just packing her things following the sudden departure of Mistress and Milady, but she didn't understand why she was standing here now. Like a man awaiting punishment. The maid who had always been kind to the protagonist realized that in the end the Duke and Duchess had found out. All the maids were wondering what business they had been summoned for. But the maid who had always been kind to Roro remembered how another maid had taken firewood from the protagonist's room, saying that there was enough firewood there already. She also remembered one of the maids saying that the girl must be roaring and making noise by now. Another maid had asked how little Orphan dared to pretend to be a princess. The girl saw it all but couldn't stop it. She thought she just needed to treat Roro even better. But as she expected, she made a mistake. Lydia's personal slave remembered how she raged and got angry at the maid for not bringing what the girl asked for. The boy tried to stop Lydia by saying that this is the Duke's house and she can't spoil his property. But the girl just slapped him and said he was a slave brought here from another country and asked how dare he open his mouth. The girl told him to get out of her sight. She said that here she determines their fate, right down to life and death. At that moment the Duke came in and asked if they knew the reason he had summoned them here. Alexander approached the tutor and asked her to tell him what they had done wrong. The woman bowed her head and said she did not know the reason they were called here, but the Duke said that she had recklessly used corporal punishment on the child who would soon become part of the Marquez family. The man asked if she would admit her guilt. The woman said she was only following Duchess Sophia's orders, and did as she wished. At which point the Duke asked how dare she call her a duchess. The Marquise has not held that title for a long time. Alexander asked if she intended to mock the Marquise family. The Duke stripped her of this status given to her by the previous Duke Marquez, and ordered her to be expelled from the estate. Of course, one might think that banishment is overkill, but if the Duke had not reacted so harshly to the situation, the child could face the same ordeal again. Alexander said he would call them in one by one and ask them about their offenses. And since he would not tolerate lies about the whole course, the action shifts to the main character. Andy told her that although she genuinely wanted her necklace back, she threw it away. The guy snatched the necklace from Roro and offered to forget. He said they wouldn't worry about it anymore and threw the necklaces away. At this point the girl remembered to treat the guy's wound. But Andy said he would feel better if she called him brother. But the girl said that it would be much more effective just to apply ointment. At that moment the protagonist noticed the maids leaving the manor with Lydia's personal slave. She didn't understand where they were going and why this boy didn't follow the girl. When Roro saw the maid who was always kind, Roro ran up to her and asked where they were going. At this point the butler came over and asked the main character if she knew the maid. The girl said that she had been nice to her since she came here. The butler said that on the orders of the Duke and Duchess these people had been dismissed. Roro cried and would not let the maid go. The girl's mum looked at the documents that described all the sins of the maids. She didn't understand how they could abuse a child so cruelly. The woman thought she should have kept a closer eye on the little girl. The Duke said that he too was guilty of not looking after the situation. Julius asked his father if he was sure of these punishments. Alexander replied that yes, they will serve as an example to everyone. They expelled everyone without giving them a letter of recommendation, which is tantamount to depriving them of the chance to find another similar job. But the boy told his father that these punishments were too merciful for someone to do such a thing to such an innocent girl. But the mum approached the boy and said that this punishment would be enough. The woman said that Roro was already capable of crying over trifles. Excessive punishment, on the contrary, could only make things worse. They thought it would be better to hide the punishment from her. At that moment, the butler burst into the room. He told them what had happened. When the Duchess went outside, she ran up to the girl and asked her not to dismiss the maid. The girl said that Ian had been good to her all this time. And if it hadn't been for her. Mum agreed and offered to wipe her tears for starters. The Duchess apologized to the maid and said that there seemed to be a misunderstanding. The Duchess said the maid should have told her earlier that she was innocent. And asked why she had kept silent. Ain replied because she was really guilty. She said that she had seen the other maids torturing the child but had failed to stop them. At this point, the girl took her by her cloak and said it was not her fault. The girl said that she was the only one who treated her warmly. So she would really like her to stay with them. And thought something she had done for the girl was so insignificant. And yet she was very grateful. The Duchess said that it looked like the girl had grown very attached to her. At that moment the woman said that a very good idea had come to her. She suggested that the maid become Roro's personal maid. By becoming a personal maid, she would be able to directly take care of her and always be there for her. Becoming a personal maid would mean that she would be promoted to senior maid. The Duchess asked the maid if she thought she could stay by the girl's side. And said that she didn't deserve the place, but if they gave her a chance she would serve with all her heart. At that moment the girl turned her attention to Lydia's personal slave. She asked her mum if he was leaving the estates too. The girl said that if she goes back then she will start beating again later and asked him not to kick him out. Mum told Roro that originally she wanted to just bring him back to the Marquis family, but if the girl wanted she could leave him here. At this point all the maids fell on their knees and begged for a second chance too. They said that if they were forgiven they would serve the girl even harder and more sincerely than Ian. At that moment, Julies drew his sword and put it to the maid's throat. He said that they should be glad that they had been treated so gently. And now they should leave. Yuli suggested that Roro leave and she agreed. At the palace, the guy said he was glad that this problem was solved. The protagonist asked him where they were going. The guy said that already tomorrow he has to go back to the academy. He said that his holidays would be over soon. He needs to leave for the academy tomorrow so that he can arrive at the place beforehand. The guy asked the girl to give him her hand and gave her a heart-shaped candy. He asked if she didn't want him to leave. The guy asked if he should stay. The protagonist said that she dare not ask him to do that. Julies patted her on the head and said that he would come again, so they would see each other again soon. At that moment Andy came running up. He told his brother he was going to kill him. The guy told his brother that Roro was his sister and not to let Yuris take her away from him. Yuris said he was actually offended. It wasn't Andy who followed him around saying he loved him more than anyone else in the world. Andy said he was just a kid back then. I mean, that was before there was a Roro. Julies told them to have fun and he'd leave. The main character told Julies that he said he was on his way back to the academy. But he replied that he was going to fencing practice and it would last until dinner. Andy said he wanted to see the training. The main character also wanted to go with them, but she didn't understand how to go. She asked her to come along and said she would help and serve things. For example, water or towels she would be there to bring. But Julie said there was no need for her to help. Instead, she could just watch the training. But the guy said only the one called Little Sister could go with him. Roro didn't understand and Andy explained to her that he meant she had addressed him wrong. Roro tried to say brother but couldn't and Julie said that it looked like he would have to take only Andy with him. But at that moment the girl addressed the guy as brother. After that they went. The protagonist did not know fencing at all, but even she understood that the guy's skills are amazing. At that moment Andy appeared. He told Roro that no matter how cool their brother was, she shouldn't fall in love with him. The girl asked the guy if he and his brother wanted to be knights. Yulis approached them and said that it was necessary to become an heir. To become the head of the family, one must be recognized with a sacred object. It is a family symbol that has been passed down from generation to generation for centuries. The sacred object of the Marquess family is the Spear of Ars. To wield this spear, one must first learn the art of fencing. This object is shaped like a sword. Until it begins to resonate with divine power, and takes the form of a spear. Of course, it requires regular and diligent training. The guy said he'll be back as soon as he's done with the training, so let the girl wait. Andy said that maybe soon his brother will be able to resonate with the holy object. Because he already knows how to handle divine powers. Everyone's looking forward to seeing him succeed. Apparently, brother is a true genius. At that moment, an unknown man walked by and said that as far as he could see they were wasting no time. That's what it means to stand in the way of greatness. His name was Casvin. The man noticed that even the main character was there. The girl stood up and introduced herself. The man was surprised and introduced himself back. His name is Casvin. He is in charge of the safety and peace of mind of the Marquez family. The man said this was their new friend to play together. Andy asked why he needed someone when he had Aurora. The guy who was rescued by the girl a little earlier greeted her, and the guy, Leon, I said he was sent by the Duke, a fellow bocce player, as a playmate for the young master. Andy asked the lad if that meant he had to learn ball handling first, and the lad confirmed it. Andy laughed and said that was the place to start. He said he would teach him fencing. Roro realized that Leon seemed to like the young lord. Julius asked his brother who he was going to teach. Andy replied that he could do it better than Yuris. He may have personal skills, but he is not a teacher. Julius hit him and asked him to repeat it again. Andy asked his brother if he would take responsibility for him getting a bump, but Yuris asked why he would take responsibility for him. Leon turned to the main character and asked her to step back for a bit. Later, when Julius was leaving, he was seen off by the whole family. Roro was crying and the guy comforted her, saying that he would be back soon. Lying in her room, the girl thought she shouldn't cry because the Lord had told her not to. But it was very sad to part. At that moment a maid knocked at the door. She asked if she could come in and the main character said yes. The maid brought biscuits and said it would improve the girl's mood, and was glad that Roro liked the biscuits. She asked if her mood had improved even a little. Roro apologized and asked if she could ask her something, but at that moment the maid told her that she shouldn't be with her standing formal. Roro asked the EN why she was so kind to her. The woman replied because the girl is very very nice, and also because she really likes the girl's character. When the maid first saw her, she reminded her of her sister. She was as kind as the girl. But unfortunately the story doesn't always end well. Sometimes heaven takes good children early. Because her sister was too kind and good, she passed away at a very young age. Roro almost cried and the maid calmed her down, saying that she was all right, she didn't need to make that face. Roro took the maid's hand and said that she too had a very good friend who she had left this world, so she would become a doctor and help the children. En said that in that case the girl should study hard from now on. The maid said that the main character should go outside sooner. After all, games are a great learning experience for kids like her. The girl remembered that she thought she had heard something like that before. Sitting in her room, the Duke and the Duchess were discussing that it was necessary to find out about the fate of the biological parents, before the adoption process could be carried out. The woman asked the Duke if he had questioned the man about the biological parents. The Duke replied that there was little reliable information from him, however. Duke recalled how he had questioned the principal. The principal said that if he remembered correctly, the woman said that when entrusting the child, she called him priceless. And asked her to take very good care of him, so she said, every child is precious to its parents. But rarely do you hear a child called precious. The Duchess told her husband to take his time. For now they are happy just to be near this baby. After a while, the protagonist sat at the table. The teacher wrote her name on the paper and asked the girl if she could repeat it. After the first attempt, the girl succeeded. Pelsera praised the child so much that the woman wondered who this little girl was. This is the governess, Viscountess Florent. Beforehand, the Duchess thanked the women for agreeing to come. Florent said she couldn't tell her in the request. The woman asked the Duchess if she was sure she was asking for at least the classes to move forward slowly. The girl's mum said that yes, they decided to start the classes because the little girl wanted to learn. But still she thinks that for children of such age it is more important and better to play than to study. Her Tiago's attitude to learning is unbelievable. The teacher suggested that the girl try writing other people's names. Roro asked if they could start with Julie's name. The teacher was surprised and asked if she really wanted to write his name. The student thought that at the girl's age anyone would be in love with Yuli's, and the woman realized that it looked like Pelsera was even thinking of adopting her. After a while, the maid was preparing the protagonist to go out on the town. The woman said that she would have to buy some things for Mr. Andre and at the same time to see what was going on in the streets. The woman asked if this was the girl's first time out on the town. Roro replied that she was looking forward to it. Ain replied that she was looking forward to it too. The main character asked the maid where she wanted to go first in the city, but the woman replied that the girl would not go with her, but with the Duke of Madam, the young gentleman. Roro was surprised and asked why then she was all excited. The maid replied that she was excited about her going out. Laconic explained that the first outing is always celebrated. She has a lot of styles in mind that she would like to try on the girls. Later, the Duke knocked on the protagonist's room and asked if she was ready. The man said there was still plenty of time so she could take her time. But the maid came out. I said that they had just finished getting ready to go out to the young missus when everyone saw the main character. They were mesmerized by her beauty. Andy ran up to the girl and said that she was very cute, and today it became even much cuter. At this moment the guy remembered that there is an expression to use at such moments. He said he wouldn't give his little sister to anyone. Mum asked the boy where he'd heard that. Andy said that they say that such lines are in the novels that the maids read. The main character didn't understand who he didn't want to give her to. The Duke took the girl of science and suggested that he should go already. When Roro rode in the carriage she was very surprised. Andy asked the girl it must be all new to her. The protagonist replied that it was her first time in such a place. Her brother told her to follow him. And he would show her all sorts of interesting things. The Duke thought his son was good. He had to make sure that Roro didn't realize anything. That the real purpose of their trip wasn't just to go for a walk. Before leaving, the Duke and the Duchess discussed something. The Duke said that she had heard that the little girl had started classes today. The wife said that Florent had been a close friend of hers since her days at the academy. Therefore, she was sure that she would take proper care of their baby girl. At that moment, the woman started talking. She revealed that after that incident, she thought everything. Roro has not a single thing of her own in their house. All the things she had used and worn all this time were things bought in case they had a daughter. But Roro doesn't own them. And since she has no belongings of her own, the maids might have thought that this child would not stay in this house for long. So the girl's mum suggested she take the children with her in the morning and go shopping. But the Duke said that the girl would probably refuse to go if they said they were going shopping for her. But the Duchess had an idea. She wanted to tell the little girl they were going to go look at things for Andy, and then they'd tell her that she'd have to conform to Andy's dress code and then they'd show her outfits. And then there's bound to be something she likes. Everything goes according to plan. And sit in the shop the protagonist throwing clothes. Everyone suggested ideas for clothes and thought she'd like them. At this point the Duke told them to stop like the girl is scared of such a thing. He pulled out a dress and said that Roro said she liked it and most of all. The main thing was there was no challenge to the amount of clothes they were offering her. After all, they said they were going to buy things for her brother. Then why did they ask her? Mum asked the girl if she liked anything. The girl said it was beautiful, but they came here to buy things for her brother. So she didn't think the clothes would fit him. Andy said that he is always with the girl and if she likes something he likes it too. The girl took out a bow and asked her brother Kim. She said it would probably suit him very well. Duke said she picked out what would suit Inga and offered to pick out something for her. Roro was surprised and said she had already been given a beautiful ribbon. But her brother told her that he wanted his image to match hers. Then everyone would know she was his sister. The boy suggested that the girl choose one for herself first and then he would choose his image. Roro said she couldn't choose what she wanted. The Duke said there was nothing to be done. He called the salesman and said he would pay for everything. The man said that there would be no other way out, because he didn't know what the girl liked. The protagonist was frightened and said that if they spent so much it would bring a little trouble. I replied that since that was the case her opinion would be very helpful. The Duke told the girl to show what she liked and then he would buy the thing and that was that. The main character looked at the shoes that Andy offered. The boy also told his father that he liked it. Mum asked Roro if she liked them. The main character said she didn't like the shoes. Pelsera said the girl had very pretty shoes. Andy put a bow on the bow the main character gave him and said they were like a couple. The salesgirl said they would go pay. At this point the Duke whispered in her ear to pack clothes that could count with those shoes. And asked her to do it without the little girl noticing. The salesgirl said she was trying but didn't know if she could do it. Andy Pavel took the main character for himself. He said that if you go that way, there's a market. When they got there was a lot of delicious snacks. The boy tried to ask his mum, but she said no. She asked if he was going to eat it and not eat any more dinner, but the kid replied that he was not a kid anymore. At that moment he grabbed the main character and ran with her. The guy ran so fast that he didn't see the wagon and barely stopped in front. At that moment the protagonist noticed that her bow had flown away. She didn't know what to do, for Ian had tried very hard to braid it. When the girl ran into the alley she realized that she was standing all alone. At that moment a boy came up to her and asked if the ribbon was hers. Roro reached for it and the guy wouldn't let her take it. Po apologized and said that the girl was really cute, so he wanted to mess with her a bit. The guy held out his hand and told her to take it. The protagonist stood dumbfounded and the guy asked if she wasn't picking it up because she wanted to be with him longer. Roro grabbed the ribbon. The guy addressed the girl by name and said it was just a joke. He said the girl reminded him of his sister. Roro noticed that he said her name and asked if he knew her. But the guy pointed the girl away and said she should be getting back. He said she shouldn't be so curious about him. He said they would meet again soon enough. When the protagonist turned round, he was gone. He knows her name. The girl thought maybe he was at the orphanage, but he didn't call her Ronnie, he called her Rosny. Or maybe it was just a passing dream. When the Duke saw the little girl, he ran up to her and asked if she was all right. The little girl said she was fine with no bruises anywhere. Her mum ran up to her and gave her a big hug. Andy apologized for what he had done. He apologized for what they were able to protect. The protagonist realized it wasn't a dream after all. It was too sad for a dream. Later at home, the maid asked the protagonist how she felt about today's walk. The girl said that Madame Duke had bought her beautiful shoes and she wanted to show them to the maid. She also said that the boy she first met showed her the way. Well, as soon as she came back, he was gone. Aine said it might have been an elf. The woman said that there was a story that if a child was in harm's way, elves and fairies would come to his aid. Roro thought it was definitely an elf. She thought about it and realized that the guy was very handsome. Like a real alpha. He said they would meet again and she would wait. Although the girl thought that the brother Yuli's shorter than him, at that moment the butler came into the girl's room. He apologized for disturbing the lady's rest and said that she had visitors and they wanted to see her. The girl asked if it was the Marquise, but the butler reassured her. It's His Highness Crown Prince Marius and his family. The girl asked Andy if he wanted to say that this girl was nicer than her. This is Crown Prince Marius' daughter Princess Bianca. The boy replied that of course. He said that as soon as she sees her she will be very surprised. The girl was wondering what the main character was. At that moment the butler said that the Roro had arrived. Bianca thought the girl was cute but she was still cuter. But at that moment she was very surprised. The main character introduced herself. She said her name and said may the blessings of the Croydle be with you. Bianca's mum said the girl was really very nice. She asked the dumplings if her dream had come true and the woman said something like that. Bianca's mother said that Roro could befriend her. But the protagonist was surprised and didn't realize who wasn't being told. At this point Bianca came up behind the girl and asked if she was a doll or an angel. The girl said the Roro had hands like a baby girl. The girl asked how can they be so small. Bianca said she too had a time when she was just as little cute. But Andy said she was only a year older. Bianca said of the main character that she could call her BB. The protagonist remembered that the butler said the Crown Prince's family was coming to visit. Which means this girl is a real princess. I asked the king why only Bianca was here. He said his son would be here soon. At that moment the butler said he brought the prince. When the guy came in he greeted the main character. The guy said the girl could call him Henry. The main character thought he was the elf. Later, the heroine wrote down the name of the BB on a piece of paper and gave it to the girl. She thanked the main character for the gift. And asked why handwriting could be so sweet and beautiful. BB's brother tells her that her handwriting looks like earthworms. But Roro says that's not true and the princess has very cute beautiful handwriting too. The age difference between BB and Roro is only 1 year. The teacher realized that it looks like because of the princess's arrival their classes have slowed down, but thanks to that the little girl is laughing. At that moment Bibi asked if she could ask her instead. But the protagonist refused. Henry went to the room and asked his sister if she was disrupting the girls' class again. The teacher realized that since even Henry had come, it meant that today's lesson was really over. Bibi told her brother that she got permission from the teacher. Henry replied to her that she must have just demanded it. They asked. Roro, upon greeting Prince Butter, said that it was okay, there was no need for such a formal greeting. He wanted her to be comfortable with him. Bibi didn't understand why my brother had suddenly become so friendly. His ears were even red. And at that moment she approached her brother and he asked what was the expression on her face. The guy asked her not to say anything. Bibi told him that it was very conspicuous. Roro said that apparently the prince and princess have a very good relationship. Henry realized that the girl was really just as Andy had described her in his letter. Then when the girl was lost he saw her riding in a carriage. He asked her to stop. But I didn't expect her to be much nicer than Andy had described her. The prince asked Roro if she was studying music. The woman replied that she was studying the notation of notes. And the guy replied that to read and write notes well, you have to listen to a lot of good music. He offered to help a little. The teacher agreed and said that it would help the girls a lot. Bibi told her that her brother played the piano very well. The protagonist was waiting for his performance. It was the first time she had ever heard such beautiful sounds. So beautiful that it even made her heart beat faster. Roro thought her heart had beaten just as hard that time, but she realized that it was a little different then. The teacher said it was a really great performance. The main character said it was marvelous and asked how he could make such beautiful sounds. The guy replied that it was because he studied music hard. He said that if she wanted he could send her the teacher who taught him. The pony explained that since this teacher had been teaching the imperial family since ancient times, it was likely that she was very good at teaching the girl. The protagonist was surprised and asked if she could learn from such a person. Henry replied that of course not, for nothing instead. At this point Andy came in and asked the prince why he was touching the girl without his permission. Prince asked the girl if he could touch her latch. At this point Andy said he should have asked his permission. Roro was glad that every day was going to be so much fun. She thought that if the mistress found out that the prince had decided to send her music teacher, she would probably be surprised. The girl thought she should tell her about it soon. But the girl overheard a conversation. She overheard someone telling the girl, "I have nothing to worry about." But the woman replied that she was still worried about him. "I said that the imperial family had run out of divine power. Even so, it's impossible to contact His Highness Crown Prince Yu. Even if it's Countess Castile, the difference in status is too great." At this moment, the women noticed the main character. They asked what she would be doing here at this late hour. The protagonist asked who Countess Castile was that they were just talking about. The main character noticed that the princess had something on her lap and asked what it was. The girl said that this doll was a gift from her father and asked to give or support it. This doll is very much like a princess. Soft and gentle, the princess asked the girl if she didn't have a doll. The girl said let Roro ask the Duke for one. He could buy her 100 dolls like that. But the protagonist replied that it was all right if she didn't have a doll. She already got enough from the Duke.